Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. There will not be peace in Ukraine. With the guys in charge of Ukraine, if they really are in charge of Ukraine, so with their attitude and with this claim, there will be no peace. Before we analyze what the Ukrainians said in Saudi Arabia to the Americans, let's set a foundation, the premises of a conversation, how we analyze this. We need to settle down or to put the realities, the facts, how we got here, why we got here, what could be the solution to get out of here, and what the goals are. I mean, we can get out of it, but we can get out of it with different goals. Russians have their goals, the Americans have their goals. There could be different goals how we get out of it. So let's put it this way. Ukraine, let's see if we agree. You might not agree, but that's fine. At least we can find a common denominator, I think. We don't have to be 100% in agreement, obviously. I don't think that Ukraine, the guys supposedly in charge of Ukraine, really are in charge of Ukraine. That's my first thing. I don't think Zelensky, Yermak, and those guys over there are really in charge of Ukraine. I think their control of Ukraine is very limited. I think they are controlled by foreign agencies and interests. In this case, coming from the United States of America, coming from Great Britain, and that's about it. Now, the interest could be economic, financial interest coming from these two directions. But I don't think the guys in Ukraine are their own people. Second, Ukraine versus Russia would have been done in 2 weeks. Boom, gone. That's another thing that I think there's no doubt. NATO is behind Ukraine that fights Russia. Now, if NATO, which NATO we know it's the United States of America mainly, if NATO drops its support, Ukraine will get to the 2 weeks that we're talking about. So therefore, Ukraine has no leverage, has no power of negotiations in reality. They can't impose to NATO, to the United States of America, anything. Because if this guy says, okay, I take my toys, I'm going to go home and play alone. Ukraine will be eaten alive by Russia in 2 weeks. Therefore, they have to listen to what the Americans say. Therefore, the Ukrainians have no say in reality in front of the American delegation. Now, who started this and why it started? I think it started in 1991 when NATO lied, United States of America, and decided to expand and advance eastward towards Russian borders, therefore bringing their military infrastructure, threatening the security of a superpower. Not at that time, but it became one again. So the reality is we have one superpower, the United States of America, obviously, and Russia that wants to be again treated as a superpower. And it will be, as of now, because NATO, with the United States of America, with a superpower, were incapable in 3 years to destroy Russia. Therefore, Russia was elevated, earned the title of superpower by fighting, not by debating. That's how the world is. Okay, now with this, let me show you the title of this article. New Voice of Ukraine, this is from March 13th, 2025. Ukraine refused to compromise on NATO aspiration at Saudi Arabia talks. So these guys want us to believe that Ukraine, the guy who showed up, a Tatar, a Jew, and a Ukrainian, this is Umerov, this is Yermak, and this is the foreign minister of Ukraine, the only Ukrainian actually here. Right? So they want us to believe that these three guys told the other guys who actually, as I said, are in charge. If these guys walk away, these guys will lose in 2 weeks. So these guys cannot say anything, impose anything, demand anything. But we are supposed to believe that Ukraine refused to compromise in front of the Americans on NATO aspirations at Saudi Arabia. United States is NATO. Do you understand that? So this is the Washington organization, treaty. That's how it started. So it's the What do you mean we refuse to negotiate our accession to NATO, to your organization? You got to get us in. What are you talking about? You understand how ridiculous this is? All right, so let's see how they argued. Supposedly. Again, it's just a game here. During the March 11 talks in Jeddah, Ukraine assured U.S. officials that dropping the bid to join NATO, this is the American organization, treaty, would not be part of any potential peace agreement with Russia. That means if we are not part of NATO, we will not be, having the right to bid for being a member of NATO, there will not be any peace agreement with Russia. We also discussed that issue of NATO and stated unequivocally, sorry for the pronunciation, that for Ukraine it cannot be taken off the agenda. Well, you don't have any aces. I think we established that at the beginning of this video. They have no aces. So this is baboonish. Now, I know, the Ukraine invasion was aggression, was unprovoked. NATO or Ukraine did not provoke the crazy Russians, and the Russians could not justify that aggression. They call it unjustifiable. That's how the media told us, and we believe them. All right. So the Russians, on the other hand, if you ask them, which you should in any quarrel, in any argument, you ask both sides and the witnesses, right? No, here you ask only one side and their witness or witnesses, NATO and these guys, who are the organizers actually, not the Russians. So if you bother to ask the Russians, hey, what's going on here? Why did you cross the border into Ukraine territory and you did what you did? They will tell you the first thing. NATO is at our border. This is the fundamental issue. NATO is at our borders. We will not accept that. We will go to war to prevent that from happening. Clear? And these guys tell us here, the Ukrainians who have no power, no authority, no aces in the sleeves, nothing. They want us to believe that they told the Americans, the sponsors, the only ones that could save their asses, that NATO should not be taken off the table. Otherwise, we're not going to talk any peace. Do you understand how ridiculous it is? So the Russians say no NATO in Ukraine, and Ukraine says no peace with them. We will be in part of NATO, which is America's organization, which talks up over the heads of the Ukrainians with the Russians. So what do you think is going on here? Someone is lying, or someone doesn't want peace. Who could that be? The Ukrainians? No, because I don't think the Ukrainians are their own people. Not the Ukrainians. I mean, we already established that Zelensky is Jewish. Zhmihal, which is the prime minister, is Jewish. The defense minister Umerov is Tatar, not Ukrainian. Then you have Yermak, the chief of Zelensky's office, is Jewish. You have the military general Syrskyi, Russian. So we have what? We have actually two Ukrainians. The foreign minister, the guy over there in the background, and then is the Budanov. That's all. The rest are some other minorities. Minority means outside of the majority. Let's put it imbecilically. I made up words. So here it is, my friends. The reality is the Ukraine has nothing to say, but somehow they say, no, my God, no, we don't want, until we get, it's an impossibility. They know it. Unless the Americans or the interest behind the Americans do all this, make all this game, all these staged negotiations, and let's see what the Ukrainians want, when actually the Ukrainians is like a child and a parent. The parent does not depend on the child. The parent has an adult, goes to work. The child needs shelter, food, clothes, rearing and wiping his ass and all that. So the child, Ukraine, depends on the Americans, not the other way around. So if you tell me that a child tells the Americans, no, I'm not going to clean my room, who has the power to dictate? The child or the parent? So again, someone doesn't really want peace here, and I don't think it's the Russians. I think it's way above the Washington D.C. It's not Washington D.C. Washington D.C. The guys over there are just the employees of the interests that make money, profit. Banking system, military-industrial complex, and the resources, natural resources industry, the energy industry. So they will not negotiate. The Russians said from the very beginning, NATO in Ukraine is non-negotiable. And yet the same thing the Ukrainians are saying. Okay, we're going to keep working, fighting. Unless the Americans really are on it, for real, and tell the Ukrainians, okay, now go to your room and clean your room and wipe your ass, brush your teeth and go to bed. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.